Hey, it's Daniel Rogers again, and we're still in the book of Revelation. This is a bonus video that's not part of the regular series. We're going to be looking at interesting textual details in Revelation chapter 13 through 16. And to help us, we're going to be turning to David Bentley Hart, who is an Eastern Orthodox scholar and translator of the New Testament. He has two editions of this New Testament translation out. I have both of them. The first one is on my shelf, and here is the second edition. And so if you're following along with me in your particular copy of this book, we're going to be starting on page 516. We'll look at a textual detail from chapter 13, from chapter 14, and from chapter 15. Let's start in chapter 13. You might recall in my video on Revelation chapter 13, we talked about how it's difficult to translate whether or not the Lamb was slain from the foundation of the world, or whether or not the people included in the book of life were written there from the foundation of the world. And there's another passage in Revelation that we'll get to later that causes us to have a little bit even more difficulty when it comes to figuring this out. But let's take a look at Revelation chapter 13 and verse 8 in the David Bentley Hart translation. And all those dwelling on the earth will make obeisance, so they're going to make worship, they're going to make offerings to him, everyone whose name has not been written in the book of life of the suckling lamb, who has been slaughtered from the foundation of the cosmos, or of the cosmos. And the footnote, David Bentley Hart says, it is not clear whether from the foundation of the cosmos modifies the word written or the word slaughtered. And so it is a coin flip how you're going to apply that word. Again, other evidence within the book of Revelation may cause us to lean more towards the written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. But again, it's not conclusive from this passage and this passage alone. The interesting thing about the lamb being slaughtered from the foundation of the cosmos might go back to the Passover, where the Passover event during the 10th plague signifies the beginning of a kind of heavens and earth. It's the blood that's shed to begin the old covenant, in a sense, where the people are going to go out of the land of Egypt and on towards the promised land. And so Jesus is, as a lamb being slain from the foundation of the world, could be a reference to the foundation of the new covenant age. Hebrews chapter 9 says he goes into a tabernacle that is not of this creation, that is to say, not of this building, that's not of this cosmos, a different cosmos. But it could also be saying that from the foundation of the world, God had purpose within his heart to save humanity through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. This is talked about in Acts chapter 2, where it refers to the predeterminate counsel of God. It talks about this in, what is it, 2 Timothy chapter 1 as well, where it talks about how before the world began, God was going to reveal his grace and his power through the gospel, which of course is Jesus Christ and him crucified. That's the interesting textual feature number one. Let's go to the next page, page 518, in which we'll find our second one. You might recall how there are two eternal things that are mentioned in Revelation chapter 14. One is the eternal gospel of verse 6, and the other is the eternal smoke and fire of verse 11. David Bentley Hart handles this translation a little bit differently than the New American Standard 95. In verse 6, he says, I saw another angel flying in the midheaven who had the good tidings of the age. And he has a capital A there, referring to the new age, the messianic age, the age of the new heavens and new earth, the age that comes after the end of the, quote, this age of Matthew 24. What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age, the apostles ask. And so this is the good tidings of the age, that is, of the age to come. Verse 11, however, he translates this idea this way. And the smoke of their torment rises for ages of ages. So instead of saying forever and ever, he says for ages and ages. Well, why does he make this change? Wouldn't that take away that the eternality of this torment that we pick up on in other translations? Well, here's why. The Greek here in Revelation chapter 14 and verse 11 is eis, ionos, ionon. Everywhere else, however, in Revelation, when John is speaking of final or everlasting things, he employs a standard phrase with a article, eis, tous, ionos, ton, ionon. With this article, it would read something like unto the ages of the ages. This is the only place in Revelation that these articles are left out of this expression. So here alone, he says the article is omitted, and perhaps this produces a weaker and more indefinite formula, one that might read as meaning for a very long time, instead of forever and ever and ever and ever. It is the gospel that is eternal. Things that are corrupt are by definition not eternal. Finally, we're going to turn to page 520, but we'll begin the reading on page 519. He talks about how the winepress was trodden outside the city at the end of verse 14, and then he sees another sign in heaven at the beginning of chapter 15. He says, "And as I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingle with fire, and those conquering from the beast, and from its image, and from its impress, and from the number of its name, standing upon the sea of glass, holding lyres from God." He has a footnote here on the expression "from the beast." He says the text does indeed speaking of conquering from or out of, that is the word ek, which no doubt means being victorious over or having victory from or something like that. And so the idea is that, again, of an exodus, that these people that we see worshiping have escaped the control of the beast. The power of the beast has been loosed, and these people are now safe in the arms of Jesus, so to speak. And so again, we have more support for what we picked up on without even going into the Greek text in our studies on Revelation 14 and 15, that the vast multitude of people we see in Revelation 7, those who stand before God of all the tribes and peoples and tongues and nations, are the same ones who at one point bowed down to the beast, but then learned by witnessing the witness of the martyrs, having Jesus Christ publicly crucified before them in the sacrifice of the martyrs and in the preaching of the eternal gospel, have now come to realize their error, and like those in Acts chapter 2, are pricked in the heart and begin to worship and praise God as the angel within this text commands them to do. Okay, that's a short one, but it's just a little extra tidbits on the book of Revelation. Having commentaries and translations written by one person comes with its dangers. There's way more bias there and less a system of checks and balances. But the same could be said about a translation or a commentary put together by one specific denomination. It's more appropriate to have a translation that's put together by more of an ecumenical group with a wide spectrum of translation philosophies and theological stances and things like that, because you really see the system of checks and balances in there. However, when you consider someone like David Bentley Hart or like Scott McKnight, as I use his often, and other translations of texts like Eugene Peterson's The Message with his paraphrase, which is done more from a pastoral perspective, there are benefits of that. And we just have to take it with a grain of salt, but sometimes they can have the courage to point us to textual features that a group of people might not be able to do. And just remember that every translation is also interpretation, as you've seen in this video. And whether or not he's correct or not, I'll leave that for you to decide. But I find some of what he said to be compelling and fascinating, right? Like, for example, the lack of the article in that particular text. Okay, that'll be all for this video. I'll get on to recording Revelation 16, I think I'm on in the recording. You'll be able to tell based on the glasses. Okay, I'll see you. Bye.